The creator of indie darling Papers, Please and Return of the Obra Dinn shared on a recent podcast that he no longer talks about his games in progress over fears that AI will slurp all his ideas up. Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only game news show brave enough to agree with him, even if it means we have less to report on.
Yeah, just how much are fears of AI changing what people do these days? I certainly get it. It feels like I'm getting slurped every day. Tech companies taking everything about me and trying to repackage it as AI, but whatever. Let's get into the comments because I think it bites off kind of an interesting discussion topic, and I'm curious if any of you, people watching this video, feel the same.
Experimental indie developer Lucas Pope discussed his evolving design process in a guest appearance on the Mike and Rami Are Still Here podcast.
Yeah, Pope said he usually likes talking about whatever weird projects he's working on, but that his attitude about that has shifted recently.
So here's a quote. I think just now the situation kind of feels different to me. He said this courtesy of transcription from Video Games Chronicle, that you don't really talk about stuff when you're working on it because I don't know. It's going to get slurped up by AI or people are going to copy it or something like that.
Pope said it's not like a hard rule to just not talk about anything. It's just a feeling that he hopes will pass so that he can get back to sharing his wacky ideas with the world.
Pope also discussed the pressures of following up critical successes like Papers, Please and Return of the Obra Dinn, asking himself questions like, quote, do I really want to maybe just go out on a high note? Why drag myself down with the next thing that people may not like?
That's right. Why try harder? You've already done it. You've proven yourself to the world. Screw it. That's kind of it, or at least that's kind of the top line AI discussion points. And I think it kind of hit on an idea. I mean, I've certainly felt that way. I felt that way kind of before AI, but now that AI is everywhere, I kind of feel it even stronger. But I don't know. Bruce, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like you don't want to share any of your ideas or your creative impulses with the world? I feel like for us, it's a bit different because we kind of have to. That's kind of our jobs, putting ourselves out there every day on streams or on YouTube. But and where do you land on it?
This is really weird because I think long before AI, whenever we would work at companies, like if we worked at Rooster Teeth or whatever, Machinima, any of those, if you said anything out loud there, this is no joke, if you said anything out loud there, it could get overheard and stolen. There were a couple of times, I've told this story on stream a couple of times, we sent an email to Rooster Teeth when we first started about a thing called theater mode, which was it was basically we just copied Mystery Science Theater, and we were like, oh, it would be really fun if we just watched movies or watched video game cinematics and we commented on them. Like when we first started Rooster Teeth, we sent this email over, and Rooster Teeth was like, nah, we don't want it. And then like 6 months later, they were producing it with another group, and I don't know whose fault it was. I didn't hold any ill will. It was one of those things where like we sent off an idea, they said they didn't want it, and then it got taken. So for me, this has always been a problem. I have never really when I have ideas, I really sit down, think about them, and try and execute them. I don't necessarily just start throwing out ideas on stream or whatever, and then they might get stolen. But it was the same at companies. I was always worried that was going to get just slopped up by some random manager, and then I was out of a really good idea and maybe some job security.
And that's an excellent point. I didn't even really think about it in those terms. But I think I was also a little too trusting and too giving with ideas like that because, yeah, that exists. But now I guess it feels like on any social media, they've essentially established those terms that if you post it there, they own it. Or they can use it to train their AI or whatever. For me, at least, I had a falling out with social media in that way, where I realized that there's really no incentive to volunteer content of any kind to any social media service. First of all, you're giving them your photos, your jokes, your clips, whatever. You're handing it to them for them to make money off of, and they usually don't give you anything. If anything, the trade-off is exposure, and boy, do we love getting paid in exposure. But then, like, when also the tenor of those media companies started to shift, when it became about algorithm-based engagement, then suddenly any ideas you put into the system, the algorithm will find the most annoying person on the entire internet and deliver them right to you. So it's one of those situations where you're giving content away to a company that you don't agree with. They're going to use it for purposes that they're not going to compensate you for or even inform you about. And then your only payoff is inviting commentary and criticism from people who go out of their way to take the least generous interpretation of anything you may have said. And to some degree, they may have purposefully done that because either they have nothing going on or they're trying to establish themselves and their clout too by rabble-rousing in other people's mentions and stuff. So I kind of hit this grand realization where I realized that I guess whatever validation I got from getting high fives from people on the internet was no longer worth it. And in fact, even those high fives started to feel pretty hollow when I realized I couldn't trust that anyone was real. So it's the facade of it all kind of deconstructed at a certain point, for me at least. But that's when I wonder, is that just getting old? You know, when suddenly the incentive of engaging with the world starts to fade away.
I really like engaging with the world. I think it's really fun. That's one of the reasons I stream on Twitch. I like to interact with people. And for the most part, I think most of the people on Twitch are real. Probably same on YouTube. If you're live streaming and they're commenting about the thing that you're streaming on, that's probably a live comment. So you're probably talking directly to a real person. And that's kind of the only thing I can rely on. Social media, I dropped off the face of the earth on social media a while back because same deal, Lawrence. It wasn't even that I was getting old. It was just that I was not engaging with real people, or I couldn't trust that they were real, just like you said. It just doesn't. It didn't feel good anymore. And it did feel good. The reason I know that this is true is because I was there for the beginning of Twitter. And at the beginning of Twitter, you could tell that it was real and you were interacting with people. And as it got slowly taken over by bots, I mean, who knows if it was before or after Elon Musk took over. I'm sure Elon Musk didn't help. But when Twitter first started, it was super fun. It was the same with Facebook. Facebook was super fun. It was like these things, MySpace, right? These things they were super fun because they weren't taken over by TikTok. Same deal. And now we're all being farmed for money for trillionaires, which is the worst. So to me, I'm like, ugh, I'm not going to do any of that. And it is really sad that people like Pope can't get out there and just talk to their friend about an idea, and they have to think about what bot is going to steal it versus just going on a podcast talking to your friend about the cool stuff they're working on.
Yeah, I agree. What you said about Twitch, I think, is super accurate. There are still pockets on this internet that bots haven't completely invaded yet. And yeah, it's not like a bot can come into your Twitch stream, scrape something you're saying, and then give you an inflammatory comment. It can do that on Twitter pretty easily. But yeah, if somebody's going to troll you on Twitch, they've got to put a little bit of effort into it and a little bit of cognition, and then it's fun. Even if it's a shitty troll, it's still fun to engage with that. Yeah, when all the humanity drains away, which is, I guess, the AI side of things, the AI fear. Do you necessarily do you worry that with the volume of our lives that are on the internet between Twitch streaming and YouTube and stuff that we've given our entire personas over to some AI bot somewhere?
I mean, I worry that about us specifically because we've been on the internet for so long. So we've been, our voices and likenesses and stuff those are long gone. They got sucked up by AI years ago. But I think probably the same goes for a lot of people who really don't even have a digital footprint because of their data. Their data is getting sold and then slurped up by AI and slurped up by Grok and again, trillionaires that are using it for nefarious purposes. They're not using it for good purposes ever. So I think it's really bad for everybody, not just us. And this is the thing that my wife has always talked about, which is the dead internet theory, right? I don't know if you know the dead internet theory. It's basically just slowly over time, it's just all bots now. It's like there's no real people anymore. And the more that I read comments on Twitter or whatever, the more I'm just like, I don't even really know if this is real. I don't even know if this person is correctly representing. Everyone's lying on the internet. They always have been, long before AI. That's always been the thing, that people would lie on the internet because there are no consequences. So it's just getting worse and worse, Lawrence. The AI specter that sort of hides in the background that probably has already stolen a lot of our stuff from us. It just makes it just kind of disgusting all the way around. So making a YouTube video or making a Twitch stream is fine because I feel like we can sort of curate those things, those comments. I curate the comments on YouTube all the time. And it's the same with Twitch. Like if I smell just even a hint of fakeness, they're gone. Like that's it. I don't want any of that. But the rest of it, if you're hanging out on Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever, I have no idea. I don't know if you could verify any of that.
Yeah, I've pretty much restrained it to only engaging with people that I have met in real life and I know are real people. But I guess that's part of the dead internet, the AI paranoia, changing the way that we see the world. I do think, though, if that means we have to sort of relegate the internet to being constrained to the theater of the internet conceptually, just to make it through the day, that's probably healthy. The scary thing is that the internet still informs the real world, and in some pretty powerful ways. But this is to me, this is a progression. To take it back to game developers and the way that they comment on their games, I noticed even back in the 2000s, there was starting to be this... Saying self-censorship is a pretty loaded term because censorship itself is pretty loaded, but at that time there was already starting to be a lack of incentive for developers to talk honestly about their work, because people would either mischaracterize it or misunderstand it. They would start to develop unrealistic expectations based on things that developers would say. People that didn't have maybe a more realistic understanding of the process of game development wouldn't really take those comments maybe the way they were intended, etc. So then it led to this divergence where developers were not really incentivized to speak openly about their work. So then players never really heard honestly about the process of making games. So it became kind of mythical. Game consumers would kind of invent their own stories about how games were made that weren't really corrected or updated by developers. Because a lot of times the gamers themselves didn't even want to be corrected or updated. There's not a lot of... There are enthusiasts like me that are actually really interested in the process and design of creation of games, but that tends to be in the minority. What you get instead is people in the media, like us, whose job it is to sensationalize news. So if a developer says something, it's almost the media's job to make it appealing to click on, to find a good headline there. And I think in that process, you naturally get this dramatization of things that are said. So again, it's even less incentive for a developer to say something that might get run with by a media outlet to make a sensational headline, and all of a sudden they've created all these problems and negative attention for their company and their teams that wasn't intended. So yeah, over time, developers have just gotten more and more closed-lipped about the process of what they make. I don't know that that's to the benefit of the audience, but it's not really the developer's responsibility to educate everybody. And like I said, I don't think everybody necessarily wants to be educated. But man, it's going to get... I feel like the divergence is going to get even stronger, I think, when there's polar issues like AI involved with game development, and whenever a developer tries to speak maybe openly or practically about it, they get shouted down. I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I'm just kind of appraising where we're at. I'm not a big fan of generative AI either. But, I would like to hear more honestly from developers about its process or its influence on game development right now.
You bring up a great point, because nobody knows how a game is made, right? Like, it's like only the developers that are working on it know how a game is made. But us sitting at home, like, I could guess. We have a little bit of programming experience, so does Lawrence. It's like, so we sort of know that there's a lot of work involved, and like we talk to a lot of developers and stuff like that. But people who haven't done any of that, they have no idea. They have no clue. And what's weird about video games, and actually to a lesser extent our job, YouTube videos, Twitch streams, nobody really knows what goes into it. So what that usually translates into is the viewer or the consumer says, oh, I know how this is done, just do it, it's easy. And I'm always like, no, it doesn't work like that. And video games are way harder than making YouTube videos or Twitch streams. So to me, I'm like, if you don't know the process or even just a piece of it, how could you possibly talk on the development of a video game? So it's really interesting to think about that even more so, because you're right, it's diverged, and now it's like just like a magic thing. It's like BioWare magic, right? It just happened. It's like, no. Hundreds of people worked for thousands and thousands of man hours to make a character animate correctly. Like, it is literally that. It's all brute force. The more you dive into these processes, the more you realize it's just brute force. It's like people just having to just step through every single... It's like watching a Disney, like The Lion King, get animated, where it's just some dude drawing on a piece of paper for thousands of hours. Like, that's all it is. And I know I'm not dumbing it down. I'm saying, like, It is truly just putting in the work. I wish we had a document, I wish we had a documentary that stepped us through from the very beginning of a game's development to the very end. We're talking like 5 or 6 years of development into a 2-hour documentary. There are a couple that are like, they kind of touch on those, but they'll always just like, it's just a montage of a person, like clicking on a character's arm and moving it. Like that's what it seems like. It's like, no, it's not that easy. And it would be so much cooler if we could have an audience that was at least not even educated, just more of just like open to the fact that it might take a lot more work than they actually think.
Yeah, I agree. NoClip does a lot of good work there and kind of trying to dive into the process of game development. But Bruce, I think you're right. I think you hit this imperative where at some point it is just the grind of iterating through a game over and over and over again and smoothing it out, correcting any problems, finding where people get stuck, trying different iterations of a puzzle until people can figure it out pretty consistently. And that's not really the stuff that makes for a really exciting sizzle reel, It is just the drudgery and the man hours and the hard work of slowly going over a thing over and over and over and over and over again until you run out of time and money and you got to ship. But I have always been a little confused that there is such passion in games consumption, but that passion doesn't necessarily translate to a genuine curiosity about games creation. I tend to think that that's typically the path of an enthusiast, right? If you love film, by virtue of loving it and dorking out about it, you tend to find out about things like camera and film stock and the way that this director shot this thing and why they chose to use this lens for this shot. Like, if you go way down into that world. But yeah, that translation doesn't seem to exist, and I suspect it's because games are just orders of magnitude more complicated. It is the intersection of almost every art that exists, plus some new ones, all working all together at the same time in this real-time simulation that's also interactive. There's a lot going on there, man. So it's a lot to break down. It's these days, for sure, I think your typical modern game is well bigger than any one human can keep all in their own head, and it's been that way for a while.
To bring it all the way back to the topic at hand of Pope talking about what ideas he wants to make, that's the sad part, is I do want to hear him talk about it. I want to hear him talk about all the weird little things that he's run into, and all the time, like he spent 50 hours correcting one line of code. It's like I want to hear that stuff because it is really interesting and it gives me a lot more respect. But he's probably not going to talk about it because who knows if it's, going to get, like he said, grabbed by AI, or it might be boring for the audience or whatever, that only wants that sensational click. And it's really interesting to think about that. We don't talk about this often, but you're right, Lawrence, that there should be, if these game enthusiasts are really excited about games, we should be excited about the game's development process. That's maybe the most important part of video games.
Yeah, and for me, it always just makes me appreciate the games more when you really understand the magic and sometimes the serendipity that a good game is the beneficiary of. Yeah, it's wild stuff. Wild stuff. Let's say in comparison, a typical episode of Inside Games is maybe equivalent to a game from 1987 or something. We crunch on it pretty hard, but we really enjoy this stuff. We enjoy doing it every day. We enjoy talking about the culture of games, the creation of games, and all that. We hope you do too. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, consider subscribing, recommending to a friend, and we'll see you next time on Inside Games.